What's up, team? Welcome to the Huddle, where your weekly playbook for not only strategizing on the game, but changing it. From mastering the fundamentals of the craft to distinguishing ourselves in the marketplace and all the challenges that come with that. We're here to give give the installer a voice and ensure that you're equipped with everything you need. Let's band together and create a new legacy in flooring. This is where you belong. All right, team. What's up, guys?
What's going on?
So we have a special guest today, Thomas. And Thomas, we're going to get to some really deep topics today. And I've been looking forward to this podcast. You know, this is about surrounding mental health and the importance of caring for yourself, caring for being aware of what emotions you have and all the stuff that we deal with. I thought I'd start by pointing out maybe a couple of stats, just things that are maybe surprising to you. But one of which was surprising to me when I discovered it is that, construction is in the top tier, next to mining for the highest suicide rate. And I'd love to get your perspective on that and kind of talk about some of these things. We're in construction in the flooring industry, whether we're in residential or commercial. And it struck me that there's something around and I'd love to get your feedback, but like there's something around the perception of being a construction worker as though it's a second rate type of uh, career or something, and we promote on the Huddle like this is a great career. It's provided me and my friends here a great life for our families and the ability to meet new people and discover new things, but it's also very, very challenging. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Thomas, and I will not butcher your last name. I'll let you say that, Thomas. Welcome to the Huddle, and we're happy to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Um, well, believe it or not, my name is Thomas Yahulski. That's how you say it. Polish as it gets. Yep. So I've been working in mental health for approaching 10 years now since graduating from Grand Valley State University. I currently work at a private practice group called Speakeasy Mental Wellness, which is also in Grand Rapids. Right now, I work doing individual therapy one-on-one with a variety of different demographics. I work with a lot of people dealing with just general anxiety and depression to autism spectrum disorders, ADHD, a growing number of diagnosed neurodivergent folks, OCD, and a lot of different other disorders. Previously, I used to work at Pine Rest Christian Mental Health Services, where I would deal with a lot more higher acuity patients. So that's, people who have a higher likelihood of being hospitalized or need more intensive treatment programs. And I've also worked in substance abuse counseling too. So I've kind of bounced around in a lot of different strata of the mental health field.
I'm sure you guys have some experience with this as well, but I feel like in our industry, one of the things that plagues a lot of our users or a lot of our community is substance abuse that you just mentioned. And it's so hard to get away from drug and alcohol addiction. Um, I've had good friends, I've got family. It's just what do you guys in the mental health community, do you guys have a pulse on what causes people to gravitate towards that? Is it just I mean, it's easy to say it's a coping mechanism, but how do you get out of these things? What kind of advice can you give, you know, the the audience and us on dealing with friends or family that are struggling, or even personally if we're struggling ourselves with this kind of thing?
Well, that's an issue that's really close to my heart. I have many personal friends that have both worked in your industry and still do, and have had very significant, severe. I hesitate to use that word because any situation can be significant, but what I'm talking about is chemical dependence on things like heroin, definitely alcohol, and other substances too. Um, I'm watching it happen right now, and I'm seeing people who have come out on the other side, um, gotten clean, gotten healthy, and are successful. Um, they did not have to get out of this field to be successful. It's not the work itself. As far as the work itself, what I understand, and as somebody who's, I can only say I've dabbled. I've done some odd jobs and helped out in things. But for people who do it professionally, some of the pitfalls I see are, you know, if they're treating this kind of like an entry level or stepping stone job, they're kind of itinerant as it is. And that kind of, the type of lifestyle they leave tends to lend itself to be able to do that. Um, how I've seen helps is you need to have a group of people who are there to support you, whether that's joining a 12-step program like AA or NA. Again, not all folks are of religious bent, but a lot of people find a lot of help and support in their church groups. There's lots of other different types of groups of different value sets and areas that can be of support, but um, it's connection with other people. Isolation and feeling like you're alone and on your own and there's no way out of that, I think, is one of the biggest factors that contributes to people feeling like they need to fill that void with something else.
Would you say that that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it almost sounded like not having pride in something that you do 8 to 10 hours a day. If we sleep 8 hours a day and then we work 8 to 10, not having a sense of pride in that is like a starting, almost like a ignition to all this, and then we get isolated and we continue down that path. And some of the comments have said, the physically demanding nature of our work leads to injury, which leads to sometimes getting on opioids or something of that nature. Um, is that accurate? Is it important? How important, I should say? Let me just ask, how important is it, would you say, for people to find pride in what they do? We have a saying that, like, I I don't I don't look for enthusiasm in my work. I bring my enthusiasm to my work. That's one of the things we say at one of my companies. It's like, you know, anyway, go ahead. I don't want to ramble, but
Too late.
No, that sounds 100% spot on because, I mean, having a physically demanding job, I mean, people try to find ways to cope with it, and not everyone is trying to take care of their physical health. I mean, some people are just really exhausted from their life situations and the physical aspect of their work that, they get home and they just want to decompress and go someplace else other than where they just were. Um, as far as having a sense of pride in your work, I think that's a key component to being successful in any business, because if you're just doing some sort of what you think is some sort of menial work for somebody else's dream, and you don't feel like you're building your own dream in any way, and maybe your values don't fully match the goal of that organization, you're not in it to win it in that sense. So you're just kind of passing the time and giving of your time and your talent and your physical energy. And if you don't feel like you're getting enough back from that, then I can see how that would also contribute to feeling kind of isolated and slowly becoming depleted and heading towards burnout.
I got something to add to what you just said there too, and this is from the outside looking in, is as far as the values matching, it's and from experience from start to where I am now, it's not necessarily that my values didn't match who I worked for or who I worked with. It was that I didn't want them to match, right? Like when I look, I was an alcoholic when I was younger. I was really bad at one point, to the point where I woke up in the morning one day and my truck was like I had to stop. Like it was still running, my foot was on the brake, and I was in drive. And then, but it was who I surrounded myself with. I wanted to go and do that. I wanted to go and have fun. I wanted to have that problem, right? Because it didn't really cause a problem. So when I put myself around people who didn't share the same views and didn't want to have the same fun, I didn't want to be around them. They weren't my people. They weren't my crowd. Um, and that's a hard reality too. Like you have someone that comes and works with us, and we're trying to push them to success, and not that we can only make suggestions, right? Like, hey, I quit doing this. I have a friend who quit doing that. I have a cousin who quit doing that, or a parent, and they found success after this. We can only make suggestions like that. We can't control what people view as their values or their core values. How do you approach that without overstepping?
I think that's a good question because I mean, that's something that I have to deal with is, I'm here to, provide, I guess, whatever knowledge I have and some level of guidance, but I'm not here to push somebody in such a way that I'm just like soapboxing for what you need to do because that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
stick when it comes to me. Somebody was doing
No.
that to me, how would I feel? I'd be like, that's cool, man. I mean, but how? Like, you need to feel some level of connection. And you know, when I was talking about some people, when we were talking earlier, some people came to mind, and I knew these were good friends, good people, good-hearted people that want well for others. But when they were put in those kind of situations around other people who were, quote unquote, on the right path, they felt isolated within those groups. It's like you'd bring that guy to a church group and he'd feel out of place around all these other people he felt like he couldn't relate to. A person who doesn't typically have, especially people who don't often make a lot of social connections, they don't, they hear, I need to join a group. And that's like they want to run the other way. I don't want to be in group therapy. I don't want to go to church. I don't believe in that stuff. I don't want to go to AA. That stuff's for, I don't know what, it's like, we have a hard time, I think, matching our identity to the group, and we grab onto that so much so that we're not willing to say, hey, maybe I'll benefit from that, even if I'm not like 100% school spirit for that team or group.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge
It,
benefit to going, maybe I should just try that out, even if I don't feel like those are my people, but maybe I can find somebody there who I can, connect with, or maybe I'll at least try this out for a little bit and see where it takes me.
yeah, get comfortable, or be comfortable getting uncomfortable, and that's the same thing, right? Like maybe that goes back to the old school, middle school, high school mentality when you're not part of a group, so you don't approach it in that manner, and when you do get surrounded by people like that, you're a little out of your element, so you don't speak as comfortably as you normally would. I don't know. I'm just trying to overanalyze that, and I would say that maybe I've been like that at some point, but maybe that's the driving force behind a lot of people not willing to open up or seek that type of assistance.
Well, it certainly sounds like isolation is about the worst. Like, it's like fuel on the fire once you have a problem of any sort. Uh, so, being, I can only imagine it takes a lot of courage to step out there and um, try to connect with people when you're feeling the loneliest already, and
Mhm.
you already have this mechanism where, I mean, I quit drinking about 7 years ago, and I drank like nuts, and I liked it. It was awesome, but it was terrible for me, and it was terrible for my mental well-being. I didn't hold myself in high regard. But the truth is that um, without finding, I wasn't isolated. I never isolated myself. And that sounds like I've got a picture of a family member who I love very dearly, but is fighting with this kind of thing. And it's at its worst when they lock themselves in their space and don't leave. And 4 days later emerge, guilt ridden and finally wanting help. It's like we always get to a point where we know we don't have another way, but man, would it be awesome to try to find a way to that spot without having to go through the hell. It's almost like um, having to get hit rock bottom, as I've always heard. Um, if there's a way to get people to not have to hit rock bottom, because it's really hard to watch.
And I think like I talk a lot about Simon Sinek, right? And there was a video that I just watched of his the other day, and it said that, one of his friends was really down, and he was like, why didn't you reach out to me? And they were like, I did, several times. And he looked back through his text, and all they said was, hey, do you want to come over? He's like, why didn't you just tell me that you were having issues, right? And it's like sometimes that's all it takes is maybe not telling you that they have an issue like that. It's you actually being like, you know what, I'm not doing anything, let me just go over there. And that was like, he said all it takes is like 8 minutes, right? So they came up with a code where he's like, anytime one of them is feeling like that, it's like they just text each other, hey, do you have 8 minutes? That way they can spend that time and kind of unwind with each other.
And something I just thought of when you were saying that, actually all three of you, I feel like, the reality is a person does want to have to change for themselves, but I feel like our society puts the onus on the individual so heavily, and doesn't do enough self-reflection of what the culture is giving and providing for these people and putting them in. So yes, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, but what you just said, I think, why aren't we reaching out to people as much? Why aren't we? I feel like a lot of people feel like they're just kind of on their own, and I think maybe some of it has to do with the culture developed by social media in general. We're supposed to be more connected, but it allows people to just, have this device as like a pacifier in front of them, and
it's something to hide behind.
Yeah, I call it like a digital veil. You basically just have this, and this is now your avatar in the world. And we can do that. That's cool. We can do that, but I think we still need to have real, organic, meaningful relationships and opportunities to build them.
That's a great point. That as a society, like we used to really take care of one another back in the olden days. Like kids were raised by tribes, and like there were tribes of people, and as you said, with social media, we seem more disconnected than connected. But it does kind of bring to light, like just if somebody reaches out, they're probably void of a code word. Maybe don't ignore that. That could be a call for help. I guess
if somebody says, hey, to you walking down the street, are you going to ignore them? Like, go, hey, and then walk away and not talk to them? If it's your friend? No, you stop and have a conversation with them. That wouldn't happen in real life. It's just we get to ignore these little blips of information in text.
That's interesting.
Right. And that, like you said, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because for the longest time I was like introvert. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And then just I wasn't on the podcast last week because my family and I were in Mexico.
He was being an introvert. He didn't want to talk to us.
And on the plane ride back, I was talking to one of the guys, and my niece looked back at me. She was like, do you know him? I said, I was sitting next to him. Like, just that conversation on the plane, it seemed like we've known each other for a while. And Tanya was like, oh, he makes friends all the time on airplanes now.
Yeah, me too, because I want the elbow room. So I got to befriend the person next to me, so that way they can, oh, you're a nice guy. You can have the handle.
You sly devil, you.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. This whole concept, almost everything keeps going back in my mind. Like it goes back to not isolating yourself and not being by yourself with your own thoughts and your own pain. And we all do have like tough days. We have tough weeks even. But when we let a friend of mine I was in his business group at My Let, talks about letting a moment turn into like your personality. Like somebody says something mean to you, and all of a sudden I identifies that, or you internalize that, and then before you know it, that turns into your new personality. Whether somebody told you at one time, Daniel, that you're an introvert and you adopted that, or if you actually were just born that way. I mean, seriously, and at the end of the day, it's when we constrict away from our human nature, which is to be, we're, I think, social beings and need interaction with other people. It's one of the things I love about the podcast. I get to see these guys every week, and sometimes we don't talk except for on this podcast. And
Yeah,
so,
I know.
being connected that way is kind of special. Outside of the substance abuse and addiction, um, and just to reiterate there, it is a lot of information you've provided, but support groups, connection with others, and the fact that we just don't take, if we're not taking pride in what we do or bringing our happiness with us to our workplace. uh and I would recommend people, if they're that unhappy, like find another career. Even though I want
Yeah.
you in flooring, it's not worth your mental well-being. But some of my darkest days have been when I'm just not taking care of myself physically, and I'm not waking up with any intention. I'm just going through the day and taking whatever crap gets dropped on me throughout that day. Is there anything, in your opinion, to like this attitude of gratitude, as they say?
Yeah, I think it's just an absolute necessary component of being a human. I think the fact that we have the capacity to do something like that is amazing, but it's, I think it's a necessary reframe because, when we're going through things like depression or just like monotonous, life cycles that seem to kind of be repetitive, and we're getting maybe bored of what we're doing, even though we mostly like it. It's supporting us, whatever, and therapists go through that too. I think lots of fields go through that. I don't think any field is immune to it, but just remembering and really bringing into balance the idea that there are ideas and thoughts you have that don't support how you're feeling right now, that are facts also. It's just when you're in that mindset, it's like you're hyper focused to only hear the negative. It's like when you feel all you hear on the news is bad news. Well, I mean, there's some good things there, but they're not either not reporting them, or they sound like blips on the radar because the negativity is almost like it almost takes on this quality of its own sensationalism. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say there aren't people in situations where, no, your situation is bad. Like what you're feeling is real. You're feeling that for a reason, but, you do have to look at what is the whole situation. If in fact there's way more problematic with, your the inner workings of your career, or what's going on in your family dynamic, how much time you have to take care of yourself, if that is non-existent, you need to start making some changes and finding incremental feasible changes where you can. I would never ask somebody, well, you just need to have a complete upheaval of everything you do and reinvent your whole life. I mean, most people don't need to do that. I mean, there's other ways to pivot, and there's probably other things you can do to support yourself and your mental health and your emotional health that would allow you to keep doing what you're doing. Because I had one friend the other day who's he was telling me that his job is just wearing on him. He's feeling depressed. For lack of a better term, it's just kind of soul sucking. He got a couple other things right together in his life, and a week later he was talking about staying there even longer with other opportunities. And I said, "What's the wait? You were ready to run the other way at 100 miles an hour, and now this week you're all right." And I think part of it was that the other things going on in our lives, like
Yeah.
relationship stressors, family stuff, that can change the lens at which we're looking at our work that we do too. So some days we just got that energy. We're in a good mood. We're all peppy doing the work. And then other days we just don't, it's just not the day. And we wish we would have stayed in bed. But, you know, I think, you know, if you're feeling that long term, then it would behoove you to start taking some steps towards seeing what you can do about it, whether that is reaching out and, you know, getting yourself set up with a therapist or counselor. And a lot of times doing that can get you resources and direction to the other things you need to, if you're having difficulty finding them on your own in your own life. Because there's some people who still have a lot of supports in their life, but they're still dealing with those mental health issues. Like they got all the other stuff, they got the whole package, but internally they're still not feeling right. So there's probably more to work through, you know, whether that's trauma or other issues that are kind of below the surface.
Yeah, I totally get that. Because, you know, myself, it's more socially accepted to talk to someone these days, which is amazing because that's what needs to happen, right? You look at before and everyone's like, oh, you're talking to someone, what's going on with you? But now it's like, yeah, everyone should really be talking to someone. I mean, a couple years ago, I was in it where I told this guy right here that I didn't want to be his business partner anymore, and I didn't want to be in flooring anymore. And I told my wife, I was like, I don't want to be with you. And it's like, it wasn't until I took a step back and actually realized that I needed to talk to someone to figure out what I had going on in my life. It wasn't anyone else, because our family's a great support system. I can talk to, you know, my brother about anything. I can give my mom a call. Like, everyone is there. It's just, it wasn't the person that I needed to talk to. I just had to work on it not myself, but, you know, with a professional. And sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to reach out, man. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I actually did it. And I've been pretty good ever since. And one of the biggest takeaways, especially lately, was I told my wife, I said, I can actually learn a lot from my daughter. We were at over near Detroit, you know, a few weeks ago, a month ago, something like that. And my truck broke down, wouldn't start. So I had to get, you know, try and fight for a rental vehicle and all this stuff. And, you know, me and my wife are trying to do all this stuff. She's getting the vehicle towed, and then we go to a restaurant and it's a Mongolian barbecue. My daughter got to, you know, watch them cook her food and stuff. And she's just looked at us. She's like, this is the best day. And I said, you know what? We can learn a lot from you.
I was going to say,
that makes
yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you could have called up my parents. They live over there. They could have got you guys a ride.
Oh, man. Her dad was like, she called her dad and he was like, I'm heading down there. If you guys don't get a rental car, I'll be down there. But if you do, just call me back. And we ended up getting the last rental car that the last open rental car place had.
That's pretty.
Hey, my wife is listening right now. Here she goes.
So Thomas, I have a question, piggybacking off of what Daniel had just said. For individuals who might find it hard to reach out, or who might know that internally they do have an issue, what are some ways that someone can reach out for assistance, for help, without broadcasting it, so that way they can kind of keep it under wraps, you know, because it's still a good starting point to reach out for help. Well, what are some good ways to do that or go about that?
Okay. Well, I know that personally, if I'm in crisis, I'm typically not going to spend, 30, 40 minutes trying to find a therapist online and get scheduled 2 weeks out or whatever it is, and there's online platforms and things like that too. But what I would say is, and it's because I've actually worked in this area too, we're here in Grand Rapids, we are very support and mental health program rich relative to a lot of other areas of the country and a lot of other cities, especially in our area here. I would say you can reach out to your local community mental health. They call it a CMH. They all have different organizations within their various counties. And typically they have, a helpline you can call and start talking with somebody immediately, and eventually get connected, within a short period of time, actually, to some sort of mental health professional or program nearby that fits with what you're doing. And we have a couple really great organizations in Grand Rapids where you can actually go for mental health urgent care. I know when I was working at Pine Rest, and I know they still have that program, you can show up there if you're in crisis and talk with a counselor immediately. And they'll, walking through those doors doesn't mean that you need to get, pack your bags and be gone, for a week in an inpatient program. It could just mean that you need to talk with somebody and they'll get you set up with services, you know. And there's a lot of other, ways to access individual mental health. But I think in those moments, like you said, you're trying to keep this, this information away from folks that you don't want to have that information, But, again, part of getting better, I think, is being able to talk about those things with your supports in your life too. But I know that some people aren't at that point yet. They're at the point where, it's scary. I don't want to have this idea that there might be something wrong with me in a mental way out with my family, my friends, my job. What is that going to mean? Are people going to look at me differently? Does it risk me getting fired? Will it prevent me from getting jobs, et cetera, all that stuff. So mental health professionals have to follow confidentiality policies. It's the law, it's the policy. What you talk about with them stays with them. Aside from having to report something like child abuse, or if you're a danger to yourself or other people and they need to get additional help involved, what you talk about is your business with that professional. So every county should have a community mental health line, and they usually have access to other mental health agencies in the area, and they can help you decide if you're going to need to do something immediately, or if you're in a place where you just need to start seeing a therapist, and it's something you can do within the next week or so.
A lot of people, I think, they don't know what's wrong, and they do just need to talk, and that's scary to not know why you're having these feelings, and a lot of it, I've, at least for me, like my personality, I've been the most miserable when I'm comparing myself to others. Like literally, that's been the one of the igniters for me going into a depressive moment, or even a few days, or being just this overall feeling of unhappiness is. And it's so easy to do with social media, where you're comparing your life to this fabricated life online, and it is, but it's just this innate, like, automatic thing. I try to stay off of social media, unless I'm using it as a tool for, posting for my businesses or something, or doing some research or things like that. But I used to, be fairly active on there, the different platforms, and watch, but that I was really pretty miserable, and I found, you know, um, that comparing myself and where I'm at in my life to someone else or something like that is that's a dangerous slope for me, at least people like me. And I don't know if that's just a me thing or if that's across the board. But anytime I compare myself to someone else and don't find just the gratitude that I have a wonderful wife and a, a really spectacular life at the end of the day, in my opinion. And that's the only thing that matters. Someone else doesn't need to think that my life is great, but I feel like my life is great. And yeah, anyway, that danger, I just wrote down one of my notes, was that the danger of comparing yourself to others.
It's funny you say that, Paul. Is a couple of my good friends over the past few years have actually taken a break from social media because things weren't going well at home. So they eliminated that as part of the cause, right? Because you're getting fed all of this propaganda and all of this uh, false sense of reality or being, of what you're supposed to be, what you can aspire to, what you should aspire to. And they got rid of that. And they were probably the happiest they've ever been. And it also put them in a position. They actually reached out to people via phone call, via text message. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Hey, I'm going to come over. It's not, hey, can I come over? It's, hey, I'm going to come over. I don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
And that would promote people, surrounding yourself with people actually helps a lot too. I mean, the right people, right? It's got to be your crowd, your people. But as far as the social media thing, I like to go to TikTok shop and see what they're selling, just so I can be like, that's really cool, but I'm not going to buy that.
And then there's me. I actually buy that.
I just send it to
So
Daniel.
the how much of that, Thomas, is like from a chemical? I don't know how deep you get into this, but like that dopamine hit that we all like get from being on social media and almost I've watched some um, YouTube videos like about mental health and overstimulation of dopamine and things like that being one of the concerns with so much social media is that you get that immediate dopamine hit. It's almost like a drug itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we have a limited amount of dopamine that we can absorb in our neurons at any given time, and there comes a point where when you've been doing something, for example, that's been really fun for like a long time, there comes a point where you feel like a little bit cashed out, right? Where it's like it stops feeling as good, it's not as exciting, and you kind of go, okay, I need to go do something else. Well, if we're getting all these little micro dopamine hits from every single little message, stimulus, exciting possible thing on our devices, shows we're watching, all the screens we're watching all day long, there comes a point where we are a little bit tapped out. And when we're doing that day in, day out every day, and we're just, getting ourselves to this point where we don't even notice it happening anymore, there is kind of that level of, when a stimulus stops having the same effect in psychology, it's called extinction. So it's like when you dip your toe in a pool of water, it's cold at first and eventually you get used to it. That getting used to it, you also get used to that dopamine hit and then that need for it. And then eventually you do need more of it. I mean, it's a chemical in your brain that has so many different functions, but one of them is feeling happy. And when you're just triggering that over and over and over again unnaturally for extended periods of time, it makes sense why people are getting depressed and finding other
Mhm.
ways to try to make that happen artificially. So I
Yep.
really liked what you said. Use this as a tool. This is not your reality. This is a way to interact with reality. It shouldn't be the reality. And I think if
Well
we
put.
start balancing that a little bit more, we're going to be in a healthier place.
Well, I know you have to jump off here in a couple of minutes, Thomas. I thought, would you, to the bulk of our audience is guys and gals out there working, installing floors on a daily basis. Some of them own their own shops and are responsible for other people. And there's these various layers of pressure and daily pressure. Can you close out with some like maybe they're not super depressed, but can you close out with some, you know, real actionable items on how to deal with that daily pressure of work, life, family, and I think that can help us. I would love to hear, you know, the positive side. How can we get ahead of this thing?
Yeah. I think, it doesn't have to be in its, like most things, it doesn't have to be in its worst state or most severe state for you to have to do something about it. You don't have to be, in the most severe clinical depression to reach out and, set yourself up with someone you can talk to. It's once you start doing it, it's not as weird or as scary as people think it is. It's a very normal thing. It's a very health building a therapeutic relationship is very healthy. Um, I think finding your version of movement, physical exercise, something you can do that naturally causes your body and your brain to release those healthy hormones and neurotransmitters, you got to find your version. Some people aren't going to go to the gym. Some people are wrecked after a day of work and they don't really want to do a whole lot of movement anymore. But, going and doing some sort of walking or some sort of light, low impact movement, if not, some sort of exercise, is very helpful. Um, I think we do need to have some sort of a group or activity or something we do outside of just work and family pressure too. I know we feel like we might not have that in our schedule, but I think you'd be surprised what you can fit into your schedule, even at least an hour a week, maybe. If you can find an hour a week to do something different, that can have a huge impact. And if that happens to be with healthy people who are the types of people you're trying to aspire to be like, who live, balanced and fulfilling lives, some of that stuff tends to rub off into your life. We need more mentors, we need more models for what we want to be like. We need people in our social circles and friend groups to challenge us a little bit, to make us feel a little uncomfortable, like, ooh, wow, that's really cool what they're doing. I don't know if that's something I can do, but maybe I could try that. We need that healthy pressure from the things in our life. So those are the kind of things that are going to start, budging those folks into a healthier zone where they can maybe they can see how they can get out of the, mundane, repetitive, depressing, draining, experiences, and start to see that there's something on the other side of that.
Yeah, and if you're one of the other people that are not necessarily, struggling with that, be that
other
support,
person. Yeah, that support.
be that person in the group. Yeah, be that positive
Right.
influence for
I mean,
someone else.
even we were talking about social media and stuff, and there's a group on Facebook called Mind and Body for the Flooring Trade, started by Andy McWilliams and Nate Hall. I mean, that's
Yep.
a great community where we can, start talking about things like that. And I think as a any trade in general, we have to start realizing that we always preach, we say all the time, have a professional do it. I'm a professional, you're not, so I should be doing it, not you. And we kind of have to look at that with our mind too. Like, we're not professionals to be dealing with the mind. There's guys out there that are trained for it. Let's start talking to them and fixing ourselves. You got to talk to the professional.
And
Yep.
my job is to help people find that and help them get on a path to be able to do this themselves, because that's really what it needs to end up in, is people finding their own way to, help themselves heal.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you
I like that.
a special thank you for joining us today. It's such a important topic in general. We toss your QR code up here for Speak Easy,
Yes.
and hopefully people will take advantage of that in your area. And I will sign off with the fact that we all need someone to talk to. I struggled a lot in the past with, well, why didn't 100 years ago people didn't need therapists and blah. Well, it's a lot different world. It's so much faster. We're so much more on demand. Like, if someone texts you and you don't text them back in 5 seconds, it's like, so there's all this demand, and there's no wonder we need mental health, or mental health. We need support in our mental health. We need other people. And so I applaud you for getting into that industry and all the work. And it was interesting to get to know all the different fields you've been through, particularly
I wish you had more time too. Yeah.
foster kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more in the future. This was a great opportunity, and I
Well, we'll
think
definitely have you back. This was excellent, and having three adopted children of my own and watching them go through foster care and different scenarios. There's I got a special heart for that kind of thing. So again, thanks for all the work you do. I know it's your job, but you must love it, and it came out in this podcast. So Thomas, special thank you, guys. You got
Thank you.
anything to say, Thomas,
Thanks for
before we
joining
leave?
us, Thomas.
No,
Appreciate you, brother.
appreciate it, man.
appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Well, we'll be in touch, Thomas, because we're gonna probably we're trying to do a similar topic around taking care of yourself at least a couple times a year, 2 to 3 times a year. So we'd love to have you back on. And again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
You as well. All right. Take
All
care,
right,
guys. Thank you.
thank you.
All right. See
All
you
right.
guys.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Thomas, and you guys,
He's still there.
I think he
You got to log off.
can.
There you go.
There he goes. I hope you enjoyed the conversation there with Thomas, and that he provided a lot of stuff. I just wanted to. He had to go a little bit early, but I thought just recapping what he said that last few moments, he says, and I'll paraphrase, but be proactive in finding help. Don't wait till you're in
Hmm.
crisis mode. We all need it. That's one thing I struggled with in the past is the fact that we do all need it. And I always wonder, well, like I said to him, 100 years ago, people didn't need it. Well, 100 years ago, people didn't have podcasts and iPhones and Androids and
A
people
lot less
text
distractions and
messaging and
comparisons.
email and
Yeah.
just all these demands on you. So there's no wonder that we're a little bit different of a society and need that support. He said, find ways to be I paraphrase this, but it sounded like to me he was saying find ways to be decisive in your exercise. Like we have physically challenging jobs a lot of times, and the thought of exercising after that is like, ugh. But even if it is just a walk, you decided to do that. The day didn't serve it up to you. So I just
Mhm.
wrote down find a way to be decisive in exercise. Uh, find a
Find
place
an
to
outlet.
belong. Yeah, find a place to belong, and sometimes that can be both, right? Maybe play in a weekly golf league, or you know, exercising with friends, or hell, a knitting club, whatever, a book club. There's all these different ways you can actually um, connect with other people, be around people who are a positive influence, and then I wrote down the mind and body in the flooring trade. I didn't know about that, so I'm glad you brought that up, Daniel. But that's the last few moments there before Thomas had to run, and man, that was awesome. I got a lot out of that myself, and I hope the audience did too. What do you guys think about some of the stuff that he said, um, like support groups and stuff? How can we get together outside of maybe that the flooring group that you mentioned, Daniel? What do you guys do to you guys are involved in softball and stuff, and there's community there. That
A lot of youth sports for us, I think. That's everyone in our family. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you talk to the other sports parents, and that's what you do. You go there, you hang out, you start talking to the other parents. And I mean, just last week when I went to Mexico with my mom and just hanging out with them and just unwind.
intentional time
I
with
think,
others.
Intentional time off
yeah,
sometimes is you have to kind of plan for that. And I think like I was talking about earlier when I was saying, to him and Tanya, like I was burned out. I really, really was burned out. And, I had to talk to someone, and then I started, taking more time with Tanya and I, just us away from the kids. And I didn't realize how big of an effect that was having on our relationship. Just, because I'm always like, let's go do this and bring the kids, and just taking time off for just her and I helped tremendously, I think.
yeah. I guess for me,
That's
I
a
just
good
love
point for
teaching my
everybody.
kids, dude. I just like hanging out with my kids and teaching them when I can. Haven't had that time yet, or haven't had a lot of that time recently. But I also know that the summer's coming around, and um, I'm going to get a lot of that time here coming up. I did go out and had BP with my daughters and my son this weekend. My body didn't want to do it. It was kind of chilly, kind of cold, but my kids wanted to do it. They were looking forward to it, so I made the time for it.
And for
And
those
came to
non
work
non
afterwards.
sports families, BP's batting practice, I assume.
Yes,
Batting
batting
practice. Yeah,
practice.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, my girls are excited to start their ball season. They actually got practice tonight, so and I'll be leaving here shortly to go and accompany them because my
They got
daughter had made
practice today.
a comment to me last year, the year before, about she was her both my daughters were practicing wrestling, and one of my daughters was like, I don't want to do it anymore because dad doesn't come and watch me. That means I'm not any good. Man, talk about catching the heartstrings. And I think I was part of um, the power the with Kyle Hedin. I was part of that mastermind group at that time, and I had to tell him like, hey, dude, I'm not gonna be able to make it today. My daughter's got practice, or I'm gonna be late, or you guys gonna have to deal with the noise because I just wasn't. I just had to show my face in the window while she was practicing. I didn't go in the room
Hmm.
or anything. Just had to show my presence, and that's
Have
important to
you
me.
have you seen some of those videos on social media where these kids are just on stage and they're looking around everywhere and just the way that they light up when they see some their parents there? That's
I see it with
Tanya.
my grandkids, and then my oldest, well, not my oldest, my second to the oldest son. He's 14. He's running track for the first time this year, and he's actually pretty fast. I mean, he's actually really fast. Pretty surprising how well he's doing. But when he comes around the bend and he just starts kicking, and I'm over there just yelling, "Kick, Caden, kick,
Yeah.
kick!" And he goes, "Man, I came around that bend, and I heard you up in the stands yelling, and I just." So they are there. They can hear you. They're listening. They're watching, and he gets a great amount of. I think kids and I get a lot of enjoyment out of watching them perform and them knowing that we get that good feeling out of it too. So it's pretty cool. Um, What's that say? Having good mental health means you're letting people know early that you are there for them. Yeah, I think that's important. That's the maybe the biggest lesson is like we can get so tied up in our own problems. We got to remember, helping others is sometimes the best therapy. So being there for other people. And I would double down on my the comparison thing. Ed Milet, who's one of my mentors, has always said that comparison is probably the root of many evil. It's just the way. It's not that you look and you get jealous. It's or you see someone doing something, and it doesn't have to be material. It can be that happy life, and you fight with your loved one, or it can be, one of mine is I was not close to my mom. I get really like almost a negative feeling when I see people who are so like you guys and your mom. It's like, wow, I wish I would have had that, or I wish I had a relationship with my mother that was loving and was positive that way. And I just didn't, and it is what it is. But um, so
I
it's
think
not
that's
always like
everything's kind of mindset though, right? Because you can look at it like that, like I wish I could have had that, or you can look at it like, man, that is awesome that you guys have something
that's
like that.
exactly right. And
Yeah.
as you work through the progressions of your mindset, uh, it can start in a it's finding that gratitude. That's what I've like. Don't compare yourself and find gratitude and be happy for other people. I think someone on here, I think it was Tanya, that was like said something about like really liking to see other people happy. I love seeing other people happy, and it's the only way a lot of times that you can get out of that funk. And but it can also drag you down if you're not in the
Yeah,
right mindset.
we were at my daughter had a skating party a couple weeks ago, and there was a girl, she probably like fifth or sixth grade or something like that, had a shirt on that said "Hating me won't make you pretty."
This is true.
I
This is true.
like seeing people happy
Well,
too. And I mean, unless we're competing against one another and they're winning, then yeah, I don't like seeing that. But um,
I'm, I mean that's also mindset, right? Because you can look at it and like they're winning, or you can look at it
so
like I gotta be better.
right, got to
yeah,
be
it's
better.
all
So I was
it's
just
all
putting
how you look at it and how you absorb the information. I love the fact that your mind is always working towards what's the positive angle, and I think we all can learn a lot from this. And this was a awesome podcast. I hope this gets out to a lot of people, and um, everybody has the opportunity to maybe get away from the stigma of getting help or connecting with someone. I know that that's very beneficial. Um, and then also not being scared to find out the things that you may think is wrong with you. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. We're all unique, and we have our own uh, uh, things that we're fighting with in life, but it doesn't have to be a negative. And you've done a great job in this podcast, Daniel, of bringing up positive angles on things. So, you know, find a way to support someone else, give them some love, um, get be a little proactive in your mental health, get out there, move your body, and let's as an industry improve and build, like we said in our opening, build a new legacy in our industry.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. I would say,
Look,
it just made me think of this. I don't.
it's
It's not
true.
a saying, but um, your world does revolve around you, regardless of what people say, right? So, in order for you to have a better world revolve around you, if it isn't that if it isn't the shadows, then go find a new center, right? Just shift yourself, find a new center, so that way you have a different world revolving around you.
Yeah, we all get tied up in our own perspective for sure.
Yeah.
And we can forget that there is a big world out there. I think that saying is really about like quit thinking about yourself so much, and especially if you're in the habit of either thinking too great about yourself and you're an egomaniac, or if you're thinking too poorly about yourself and you don't think you're worth the dirt that gets driven over. Either way, that's probably not the best. And so, yeah, changing your environment. There's a lot to that. I mean, this podcast could go on for 5 hours with different professionals talking about
Oh
how your
yeah.
environment affects your mind and your body. But really, I do like the idea of both with passion and enthusiasm. Don't you know don't try to find your passion. Take it with you in everything you do. Take your passion with you. We can be passionate about our families, and that may be why we're working. But trying to find that why, which Simon Sinek talks about a lot, um, finding your why doesn't mean you have the perfect ideal job, but if you're doing it for the right reasons, it can make it enjoyable. So with that, guys, I'll sign us out, and thank you so much for your input today. Was awesome, man. It was one of my favorite episodes
Yeah,
to date.
likewise,
Yeah.
So
brother. And Thomas, yeah,
Right.
if you're listening or if you come, yeah, thanks again, brother.
yeah, thanks again to Thomas for sure.
All right.
And you too, Daniel, Mr. Positive. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jose. And we will talk to you guys next
Next
week.
week.